Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Blokes podcast. Ryan Hassan from the Centre for Healing here, joined as always by Nick, the Sultan of Steel, Sutherland, founder of Myndfit, meditation extraordinaire. Nico, how are you, mate?
I'm at one with myself.
This is going to make for a great podcast. You're just going to sit there in stillness.
All right, I'll snap out of it. I literally just came from a meditation. So I am very grounded. I'm very peaceful, but I'm excited because we get to spend an hour with James, who is I'm going to call you a friend of mine, James, because we have known each other for many years, and it's just you do live in Wales at the moment, and so we are worlds apart over the other side of the world, so we don't get to catch up that often. So I'm genuinely excited just to hang out with a friend, two friends today. Ryan, I guess you're a friend, but two friends.
James, welcome to the show.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for having me. Nick, good to see you guys. It's been too long since we caught up. But yeah, we'll put it down as friends. Definitely, absolutely. We've had a beer together. So I've been to the cricket as well. So absolutely counts. So guys, looking forward to be on it, and whatever I can do to help people, just count me in.
And Nick, sorry, can you just confirm with our listeners and watchers, this is the most technologically prepared guest that we've had on the show.
It's like Steven Spielberg has set up whatever's happening on that end. It's like it's 6D, it's 4K.
I know. I feel like a pixely piece of shit over here.
I'm sorry, guys. I don't mean to put you down straight away first thing in the morning or evening.
I feel like VHS over here.
Yeah, Nick, you're at your fucking bedside lamp trying to it's like you're trying to tell a ghost story around a campfire.
Now, kiddos. James, was the cricket we went to, was that it was the Boxing Day test.
Boxing Day test, it was also Australia-Pakistan. Is the one when Nathan Lyon...
Yeah, Nathan Lyon. Yeah,
it's when Nathan Lyon took that wicket, everyone just stood up for Gary, and he just got that wicket. That was ridiculous. I can't believe I cheered for Australia. Never in a million years have I cheered for the Aussies before in my life, but I jumped up and celebrated for that one.
But we had this was hilarious. So we had no idea what was going on, and apparently we found out after there was this massive Facebook group of like 10,000 people that said on this over. On this ball, we're all going to stand up when Gary Lyon's bowling and cheer him on and celebrate. And so we saw everyone standing up, and James and I were like, "Oh, well, let's follow the sheep." And we stood up as well. What's going on? And he got a fucking wicket on the ball.
Really?
The MCG lost its shit.
It did.
As you would. What a moment.
It was absolutely incredible. It was absolutely nuts. It was like, I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, me being there, I wanted to go to the MCG for the boxing test anyway. And I was like, okay, I'll come along. Being even though I'm Welsh, I support England cricket over here. And like a big cricket fan. I was like, yeah, go and see us. Even I started cheering, got swapped, washed away with the whole emotion. It was brilliant. I'll always remember that day.
You couldn't have scripted it though. Like this obscure Facebook group on this, at this exact ball.
I wonder how they chose that ball.
I don't know, just randomly.
That's a good question, actually.
But Gary delivered. He delivered on that ball.
He must have felt the energy. That's the energy behind the crowd.
And the people appreciated it. The people appreciated it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's unreal.
Even this Palm appreciated it.
Yeah. James, look, tell us a little bit about Strength Matters. Like always, myself and Nick, we don't do too much research on the show, so I'm really interested to find out about your business, how long you've been doing it, and what you guys do.
Yeah, no, so I've been doing Strength Matters now for it became Strength Matters in 2015 after I put the word Strength Matters on a t-shirt and realised this is a far better name for a business than Kettlebell Fever, because people started buying more of those t-shirts than any of the t-shirt we'd ever sold. So that was kind of how the name came about. But we started about 2011, 2012, and it's just morphed into this idea that we help people over 30 lose weight, get stronger, and live better. It's as simple as that. We do it with coaching. We have books. We have a print magazine that we put out every month and everything. And it's just like a case of just helping the over 30s crowd getting healthy. And as in always, we talk about the four pillars of being healthy: health, movement, strength, and cardio, but mindset and everything is important. That's we include that under health, to be honest with you. So we know it fits in with everything. So we just helping good people get healthier, live better, and lose a bit of weight in the process.
And why people over 30?
You've also got a Sorry, Ash, you've also got a podcast that you only get the cream of the crop on, don't you? Best of the
we do.
Podcast. So, for those out there listening, get on the Strength Matters podcast. The highest caliber of guests appear on there.
I was shocked when you said you were a guest. I'm like, it's called Strength Matters. Why would Noodle Arm Sutherland be on a show like that?
Des and Troy turned up and absolutely rocked it.
Exactly. No, it's funny. I think you've had quite a few people message and contact you out to the back of the podcast as well. But we've had a lot of people talk about this because it touched on stuff that we don't, in the fitness world, we don't really touch on, particularly mental health, being open about feelings, talking about certain things. So yeah, it was great. So Strength Matters on the podcast.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted you on today, because when I went on there, and I talk to clients about if you have a body, you're going to train it, but if you have a mind, you need to train it too. So the mind and body aren't too dissimilar in how we need to look after them. And if you've got physical health, you've got a body. If you've got a mind, you've got mental health. So we talk about how they all impact on each other, what we take on board physically and mentally, the nutrition for our mind and body. But how much we're moving affects how we feel affects how much we move, so on and so forth. So yeah, it's going to be great to have you on, just to sort of open up that physical health thing, and if you want to dip back into what actually got you into kettlebell heaven or whatever you were calling it back at the time.
Yeah,
kettlebell fever.
That's the one back in the day.
It was a bit of this with the.
That's what I'm getting the vibes. Yeah.
But it was funny, like it just in the name. It's quite funny how a name can change and everything. Like because when we had kettlebell fever, we're doing the same sort of things, like doing products, courses, books and everything like this. But because there was the word kettlebell in it, we only attracted a kettlebell audience. That's why we changed to Strength Matters. It was just became so niche that there's more to what we did, and it just wasn't what we were anymore. And it's like the difference in like that name change was like day and night. It was like the massive whoosh afterwards. Once we changed the name, because people just appreciated it more. Plus, strength of mind matters. It's so many connotations in play and stuff like that in the whole thing. Strength isn't just about physical strength. It's your mind. It's just anything you can think about. Strength just matters.
Yeah, and what got you into this business, James? What led you to this career this journey you've been on for the last 10 or so years?
Well, I've always done sports. Like cricket's always been my main sport, with a bit of rugby and a bit of soccer in there as well. But like when I was actually in the police, I was in the police in London for 10 years, and I was struggling with a really bad back, to be honest with you. My back was just like I was like almost like a cripple. Like I was spasming all the time in my back. I'd go for a month or two, be fine, then I'd be out for 2 or 3 months. And that was because of the way we were training, because like some of the units and stuff I was working in back then, we had to train for an hour a day. That was part of our contract. And we were just like meatheads in the gym, going in and like bros, just lifting, deadlifting, bench pressing, doing all the stuff that you wanted to do. And it was like, it was just counterintuitive to what we were trying to do. Didn't know what I was training, how I was training. So long story short, like I was sick of being injured and seeing the doctors and seeing the physios who couldn't help me. So I tried to figure it out on my own. So I got my bosses to pay for my personal training course in the police, and they did.
Well played.
And I continued to do some other courses and sent me around the world to go and learn from different people to bring it back into the police. And when I did, we helped reduce injury rates by about 20-30%, long-term sickness rates as well. Because instead of just lifting stuff, we're focusing on the whole body, like how well you move, how well your cardio is, how well you strength train, and the quality of your strength training. And that's how it started. Like suddenly people were asking me outside the gym, hey, how do you do this? What do you do here? And it just took off from there to the point where it was just before the Olympics in London in 2012, where I was like, do I really want to do the Olympics, or do I want to get out and start my business? And that's the choice I made. I left the police, and then here I am, almost 10 years later, still doing it, and still the best decision I made was to leave the police, actually.
Amazing. And why the focus on over 30? You see that as kind of the after 30 being quite a critical point when it comes to people's physical health and strength training?
Yeah, it's interesting. It was we got to the over 30s bit in the last 2 years when we just dived into all our data and all our like email lists and the people and survey people, the age groups we were working with, and it just came back that most of the people were over 30, and all these people were more interested in doing health as focusing on their long-term health rather than aesthetics. And we always found that like. We can all relate, most guys can relate to this, that, you know, particularly at our age group, we grew up with Arnie in like Conan and like Terminator and like Predator, all these movies back here where Arnie was just looking ripped, and we're like, yeah, we were some of that. So we picked up dumbbells back in the days because we wanted to look like Arnie. And we can all relate to that. There's some like, even now we still want to look aesthetically good. But in our 20s, we don't care how we get there. We just want to look aesthetically good. And that's, you know, we look good for the beach, we look good for the women, you know, look good in our shirts when we go out on the piss on the Friday, Saturday night, whenever it is. You know, and our focus is how good do we look. We don't care over how well we lift something or what happens because we can recover quite quickly. Whereas what I discovered when you get into your 30s, and this is also my personal experience, when I met Nick actually, down in Mount Eliza, down that way, it was like, I was in my 30s, I was traveling a lot, I was overweight, I was stressed to high hell for multiple different reasons. And you realise actually your 30s is probably one of your most important decades to set you up for the long term. And now what we compounded this by asking a lot of our clients who were in their 50s and 60s at the time, saying, look, what's the few things that you'd go back in time and say you wish you did better or wish you should have started earlier? And they all said, I wish I stretched more. I wish I focused on my health more in my late 20s, early 30s. And we're like, actually, there's a good point here. We can learn from the mistakes of our elders and like focus on here. And plus, if I'm being brutally honest, most people in their 20s want to spend their money on the piss or other stuff or random gadgets and stuff, whereas most people are happy to invest in their money and have got the money as well in their 30s and 40s to invest in coaching and training, which is a big part of it. And they start to value the importance of health. Like it's health comes first. We start thinking about the long term. You know, again for me, in my 30s, people around me were starting to die. I was going to more funerals than I was weddings, if I'm being honest. And a lot of the time, there was a few, you know, my police mates who passed away, but then there was also people who died in the late 30s of heart attacks, I knew. And like other things like this, and we realized, no, actually, this is the market we want to serve. This is the market, you know, people we want to help the most, and we can make the biggest impact on. So that's kind of why we've gone to the 30s, more the long-term message, and go, look, let's, you know, realize this now is like we haven't got long to live on this planet anymore, and we've got to change our mindset. We're not indestructible. We've got to change the way you train and focus for the long-term health. So you're still rocking. Like I still want to be rocking my snowboarding when I'm 100 years old. That's my ultimate goal, is still be snowboarding like some of those crazy Austrian guys and who are skiers. Like you see couples in their 90s in Austria still skiing. Like it's crazy. It's like, are we doing that when I'm 100 years old? So that's kind of the long-term focus and shift that we did, and why we help people.
It's an interesting intersection, the aches and pains and the disposable income. You're like, all right, well, you know, I've drank, I've abused this to some degree. Now I can actually start investing in it because I understand that, oh shit, it's actually quite fragile. It's the only one I have. It's got to get me from here to there, hopefully. So that's where we start looking after a little bit more and understanding that big muscles doesn't equate to being healthy.
No, not at all. And that's the thing we see, and we see more than anything. Like crikey, it's some of the stuff we do. We take actually, like I'm a computer science geek at heart, so I like to see raw data. So we take, when we assess people, we look at the data from it. We give them a score. We call it the everyday athlete score, is what we call it, and we break it down into these 4 elements: health, movement, strength, and cardio. And the heart is, I think, is the most important muscle in the body, particularly as you get older, with the heart attacks being one of the biggest causes of death around the world. But time after time after time, cardio scores the poorest out of all our tests. You know, if you're looking at the average scores, I think 18%. It's down to 12% in America because cardio is like just not the done thing over there. Plus, they don't walk anywhere. I've discovered they just drive, and it's such a low barrier down there. That it's crazy. We've got to focus. Yeah, we've got to focus on the heart. Focus on long-term health, and it starts with there. So it's way more than being strong. Like it's strength of heart, strength of mind, strength of character, all these different things.
And as we were talking about pre-podcast, you know, we talk about how they all impact on each other, the mental, physical, and nutritional health. And you're talking about the heart, and if someone's mental health isn't in shape, if they're not self-managing and self-regulating their emotions, they're going to be pumping, cortisol and adrenaline through their system. It's going to be making them feel very unhappy. They're going to go and make poor decisions nutritionally. They're going to be sitting on the couch watching Netflix. They're not going to be up moving. So, that healthy mind, healthy body sort of thing, that they need to be equal partners, and forever and a day, everyone's prioritized. It's funny, I do these 3 interlocking circles, and we give people a score out of 10. What score would you give your mental health, your physical health, and nutritional health? Physical and nutritional is usually okay. Mental health is usually a 2 or a 3. Mm-hmm. And I say, all right, now how many hours a week are you investing in those other 2? And they're like, oh, yeah, well, I cook food, and I go to the gym, or I go for a walk, I do this. And how many hours a week are you putting into your mental health? You're doing what? They're just, but yet they're expecting to be healthy and to be motivated and to be up and about, and it's just the math doesn't add up. So
well, a lot of people think that if they look better aesthetically, then that'll make them happier, or that people will love them more. And unfortunately, it doesn't tend to work out that way, because I'm sure you see it, James, kind of that pursuit of some sort of purely aesthetic goal. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as you've got all these other pillars in place. But if it's purely aesthetic, it's never enough. I've had people, and they would do competitions, and they'd be at 6% body fat. And it's like, oh, I've got this pocket of water, here, there's veins everywhere else. And it's like, it's never enough. It's like, I used to be a drug addict. It's like going for a drug, and it's like, it's never quite enough. You're always searching for more. And I think a lot of people run into that.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny, when you talk about elite fitness, let's take the bodybuilders who had 6% body fat as an example. That is what we can count as elite fitness for that particular sport. That's closer to death than it is health. It's on the other end of the spectrum. And that goes a lot the same with a lot of elite sport. Elite athletes are not necessarily healthy. Health and elite fitness are 2 very different things. Elite fitness is pushing the boundaries of physical fitness to the absolute utmost, but it doesn't mean they're healthy. You talk about women.
So many people are reliant on exercise to get the serotonin levels up and increase how they're feeling, but they become codependent on that exercise. So if they break a leg, all of a sudden they can't go to the gym, they can't exercise, their mental health just spirals back down again.
Exactly, and that's the thing we're seeing more and more and more. Like you talk about, being a drug addict, in the sense of a lot of people use fitness as a drug. There's 2 elements to this as well. You've got people the cardio junkies, who want to push themselves to burn out all the time. They want to run as hard as they can, and they feel good because it gives them that runner's high. But in reality, it's a drug. It's just like fueling it. It's not actually good for the body in any way, shape, or form. It's putting more stress into the body. I'm talking to the guys who want to do a 5K, a PR 5K every single run that they do. They're trying to burn out. They're just burning sugars as fast as they possibly can to get to that runner's high. But guess what? That runner's high becomes harder and harder and harder to get, and you're chasing it more and more and more. So you actually
sounds
build
familiar.
up. Honestly, it's not a way to improve that. You don't. That's not how the elite train. Full stop. You don't do that. You just can't go here. But most people do. They think that's the way to train. Same with all these HIIT workouts you see on YouTube, and everyone loves a HIIT workout in class. It's exactly the same thing. It's like crack cocaine. It's like crack cocaine. Literally, it's like you get that. But CrossFit is a good example as well to some extent. CrossFit's got some really good things about it, but one of the things a lot of people do is they're working out to failure every single time. So they're teaching the body to fail each and every time, but they're pushing that high. They're pushing that adrenaline rush, that junky adrenaline rush to get that high every time, which is why most people after 12 to 18 months break down and never go back to CrossFit again. And why the vast majority of people over 35 don't do CrossFit, because they're burnt out. They can't sustain that lifestyle with what they're trying to do. So it's just a fascinating thing you've got to think about, because to get to elite performance, you need to build a base and build it up slowly and get to the top and peak at the top. So people always just see the iceberg effect at the top of the workouts, like these guys are doing the hard-ass workouts. But they don't see the 20 years of development underneath to get them to that stage in the first place. They try and copy.
I would have had a similar thing to you, being ex-military and the way we trained, and we used to have these certain tests that we had to pass to be able to stay combat ready and everything, BFAs and CFAs, and I used to love running so much, and it was 6K, or when we used to have this 2.4K test, the beep test. I love the beep test. I got up to about 16.5 one day in the beep test, and I was just smash the PT, and I'm like, yeah, and you keep chasing it, and you keep trying to get better and better and better at it, because it feels so good when you break through, and running 2.4K in like 7 minutes 11 seconds, I think. But I was like, that's good, but I want to get it under 7 minutes. And so, I'd start obsessing about what am I eating beforehand and what am I eating afterwards. And, it become an obsession. It was very out of balance. So everyone looked at me and goes, fuck, Nick is super healthy. Nick is super fit. Nick is super, but I wasn't, because I wasn't in balance.
That's the key word, isn't it? Balance, because we're talking about it's these both extremes. It's like this at this end, we're like someone who's far too sedentary, someone who's just eating crap every day and needs to start moving and getting that going. And then we're talking about this other end of the spectrum, which is unhealthy. But our classical ideas of health or fitness, people look at that and go, and so there's kind of this positive reinforcement as well. Like for you, what did you do on the beep test? 16 and a half, holy shit. So you're like, they validated me, I need more.
Like it's funny, like the classic questions you get from people are, what's your 5K time? What's your 10K time? How much do you bet? How much do you bench, bro? How much do you deadlift? And like each time, now my response to them each time is, I don't care. But I always say, like, oh, they go, look what? I don't care. But then I flip in the conversation and go to them, okay, look, I got an idea. If you ran a 5K as hard as you could, do you reckon you could do that again, like after like equal rest? And most people couldn't, because that's the biggest thing. The shows of people's in their recovery, ability to recover and be healthy, is their ability to recover quickly. And most people, you can do it as simple as a test, like I could take a rower, Concept 2 rower, do a 500 meter row, rest the same time as it took you to row those 500 meters, do it again and try and get the same time. If you're not within 5-10%, it means your recovery is way off, and you need to be focusing on your health and the ability to recover faster, not your actual time. Because if we focus on the ability to recover, your time will come as a consequence of that as well. So
I talk to clients all the time about, I use Arnold Schwarzenegger as an example. Yeah. And his success in becoming Mr. Olympia, an equal part of that was his resting. His sleeping was just as crucial, was an important element as all the weights and everything. All the time he spent in the gym, the time he spent asleep was equally as important, because it allowed him to recover and to.
There's also a chemical element to that, which aids in the recovery as well.
No, don't get down.
Because I got the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding when I first started lifting weights. That's a great book, by the way. But we're talking him doing 2.5 hour workouts, heavy weight training 6 days a week, and the ones of us who aren't chemically enhanced, that's going to overtrain you.
Yes, but my point is that it's resting is equally as important as doing the work. So recovery needs to be seen equally as the working out.
Yeah, it was funny when you talked about James, about how how much do you bench, bro? What's your 5K? And I remember I have had people come in and maybe they've just started doing work on their mental and emotional health, and normally young guys. But they get so excited, and literally, and someone, let me know if someone said this to you, Nick, but young guys go to me, what's the longest you've meditated for? It's like the spiritual, what do you bench, bro? And I'm like, it's not the focus.
I had someone say, how long have you been happy for? I think it was just this, how long have you been happy? And do you ever not react? If someone said, do you ever not get angry? And I'm like, I am nowhere near enlightened yet. I still have my human.
I've seen you on the golf course, so I can confirm to all listeners there's some reactions going on there.
I don't believe so. I think the reactions are to your reactions. Don't throw me under the bus.
I'm throwing you under. You're right under. Get under there.
But it's interesting, like we guys said before, like one of the things that we've realized, we're talking about nutrition being really important. What we've discovered, like this, whether this is right or wrong, this is our approach to do it. What we've discovered, that most people over 30 who come to us looking to lose weight, just live a bit better, be healthier, they're not in the mindset ready to do nutrition, if that makes sense. So we have to do baby steps to get them towards it, because it's just too much for them to take on board. Like it is incredible, like the emotional distress it can actually cause them if they're not in a good place to do it. So what we did now is that we always say nutrition for us. Don't get me wrong, I think nutrition is one of the most important things you can do. But what we discovered, and we looked at this again using data, looking at our clients. We try to find commonalities between our best performers, like the more elite type of guys we're training, and the ones who are just starting out. Like, what are the commonalities? We can't compare them on training or running or anything like that at all. But we then worked out, well, what's the three things? What are three things that we all need to do? And what we broke it down to was walk, water, and sleep. Like, no matter how elite you are, you still need to walk a lot. You still need to drink water, and you still need to sleep. So we started comparing the data on those three things alone. And what we found was high performers are walking on average between 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day. They're drinking 7+ glasses of water a day, between 2 to 3 liters. But we worked as 7 glasses. And then they're sleeping at least 7 hours a night. Whereas the non-elite performers, they're sleeping less than 6 hours. They're drinking maybe 1 to 2 glasses of water if they're lucky a day. And they're literally walking less than 3,000 steps a day. And what we discovered, and we trialed this thing to begin with, and we realized we need to focus on these three things first to help people get to it. And that's what we did. And what we found was people are in a better place long term to tackle training. Their mental health has improved because they're drinking more water. They're going for a walk, getting some vitamin D, getting some fresh air, peace of mind. That's how we always start things off. Then we get them to drink some more water, because people just don't, well, particularly in the UK and non-hot countries, they don't drink enough. They drink coffee mostly, or beer, or whatever it is. Or they equate coffee with water, or they equate anything else. Like, we had some poor lady. She was drinking 18 cans of Coke, real full-fat Coke a day. It was she needed counselling, and we sent her off on a way. It was an emotional trigger, which was helping her deal with an abusive relationship, actually. But she's drinking 18 cans of Coke a day. And then, most people aren't sleeping 7 hours a night, because if you don't get the sleep in, you're not in a good mental headspace. We know for a fact that the body craves more calories, no matter what, and it comes from junk food mostly, by up to between 400 to 800 calories extra a day, which if you look over the course of a week, you're looking at 2,000 to 3,000 calories extra a week. We've got no hope in helping people do a nutrition plan, which is actually one of the most emotionally and physically, mentally taxing things to do. So we found that once you've got people in a good place with this, they're training out more regularly, by drinking water, sleeping more and walking more, they're making better food choices automatically. And it's just the next progression into nutrition talk after that. So we think nutrition is so important, but we're finding people over 30 who are so super stressed, they've got no time to think. We focus on these basics first, get them right, and then we tie into nutrition, and then they seem to fast track their results much quicker if we take the slower approach first to begin with.
Yeah, it's
I don't know where your mind goes, Huss, but mine, when James is speaking and you're talking about nutrition, we're talking about trying to change people's eating. People are in a relationship with food, they're in a relationship with exercise, and if you take away the 18 cans of Coke, that's going to trigger her, or she's going to replace it with something else. So for us, it all starts with mental health and looking at, if you're in a healthy relationship with yourself, a lot of people don't value themselves. They're like, I'm not important enough to spend time and energy and money on. I don't really matter. I don't really care. There's no self-love, no self-worth, no self-respect, no self-discipline. All of these critical self parts aren't in place. Yet so many people are walking around being told, you have to eat better, you have to train better. And if that foundation isn't solid and in place and able to support all that stuff, they're just going to keep failing and develop that failure mentality. So it's really interesting when you look at the relationship people have with the things in their life. Would you agree, Huss?
100%. The relationship with food, and what people don't talk about enough is the relationship with exercise. They see exercise almost as a punishment, because the media and everything, everyone's doing this quick 20-minute hit workout, the punishment type workout, kill things, which is great for the people who are already fit and healthy. But for people who are just, want to get started or something, the last thing they want to do is be beaten down and told how crap they are at doing something. Like, I don't.
But all this military stuff doesn't help either. Like all the SAS shows and all this stuff.
No, it doesn't.
I think I think we spoke about in the other podcast, Has, about people's association with the word discipline. And we have a terrible association with the word discipline because we get disciplined as kids, and so it's seen as punishment, that word you just used. But the if we can reevaluate and assess our association with discipline and see the benefits that come from being disciplined, it means getting up at a certain hour, creating these routines, setting a goal and being disciplined enough to work towards that goal, and not having expectations, but just, okay, my goal for this week is 7 glasses of water a day. Just that's all I'm going to focus on. That's the only box I need to tick. And if I can start building my discipline in that area, then it's going to be easy to do these other things. But people don't. They go, I have to do it all at once, or as soon as you say discipline, they're like subconsciously like, no, I used to get punished. I don't want to, it's going to be hard, or it's going to be,
that's the association, isn't it? Discipline and I'm going to be punished. They kind of have been gelled together or conditioned that way. So it's about separating those. I think it's great, James, what you've done by working out based on the data and going through all these clients, like, what are these 3 levers that we can pull that are going to kickstart everyone on their journey? Because there's so many different diets out there. There's so many different training methods out there. And you'll agree, but the number one with all of this stuff, and same with what we do, Nick, is adherence. If you're not going to adhere to it, then it's not going to happen. That's why people go, I heard you can lose weight on a keto diet or a carnivore diet. It's like, yeah, you can, but good luck sticking to it for any meaningful period of time. So if you can just say to someone, get that water intake up, get your sleep 7 hours minimum, and get the steps up, above 7,000 or 10,000, then it's like, okay. And then, like Nick said, when people do that and see that they can do that, then they're like, okay, what else can I do? And then comes the nutrition, because if we give people too much, adherence is gone.
Exactly. And that's improve that. Sorry, James, if you can.
And that's the thing with us, like, the way we wanted to find a way to help people remember it quickly, and for us to go back to basics to remember to help with people things aren't working. So the way we call it WWS, walk, water, sleep, and the 777 rule. Walk 7,000 steps a day, drink 7 glasses of water. I don't care what size glasses, just drink 7 glasses of water, and have 7 hours of sleep. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. But if you focus on that, get people to think about this, because people who are walking just 2,000 steps to them, 10,000 steps is a bloody long way away. Like that, they can't physically imagine themselves getting to there. So we get them to 3,000 and they get to 7,000. Great. It's not the end goal. It's a starting point and a baseline for us trying to get to. And what we always find is when we go back to people who are struggling to, people who, like, you've lost lots of weight and we're now on a maintenance program, but they start to put a bit of weight on. The first thing we check now is WWS, what's happening here? And I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, it's this area here. This has fallen off the way. They're not walking enough. They're not getting enough sleep. They're certainly not drinking enough water. So it's like our go-to place to begin with for everybody, no matter how elite you are or where you're at. We pull it back to here to start with here, and then we go back up again and go back up the scale, building on each step and each foundation as we move along.
We have the same thing in our maintenance program, James, and it's as soon as someone's falling off the wagon, getting more reactive or whatever. I go, okay, are you prioritizing yourself? We've got the 5 fundamentals. The first fundamental is prioritizing your mental, physical, nutritional health. Something we suggest to clients is just waking up, doing a 15-minute meditation, like have a glass of water, fall out of your bed onto the floor, onto a cushion, sit there for 15 minutes and just do a meditation. Just sit and focus on your breath, ground yourself, mentally sort of prepare yourself for the day. Go and eat a mindful breakfast. Don't just consume and grab a coffee as you're rushing out the door. And do a bit of stretching while you're on the floor. Just sort of start moving around. And it's incredible what happens when people spend the first half an hour of the day. They actually set themselves up for the day. They meet the day instead of snooze, fuck, coffee, yell at kids, speed on the way to work. I'm going to be late already. Adrenaline.
It's like you're playing catch up all day from there.
Totally. Yeah. And when I was working in Shivasom in Thailand, I met an amazing guy from the UK. Actually, he's a Qigong instructor, and he was talking about the studies that have been done into longevity of life and how it's based on if you're in a sitting position on the floor, how many touch points you need in order to stand. And he said the more touch points, it's 10 years off your life.
Yep.
And he said Asian people live longer because they're so accustomed to not sitting on chairs or couches or anything. They actually sit on the ground, and they lift themselves up off the ground so much, and they squat to go to the toilet instead of sitting on a toilet bowl. Like, we're so lazy in the Western world.
Yeah, it's honestly because when we go when we assess in like health, movement, strength, one of the assessments we look in the health assessments, we look at a couple of key things. We're looking at like simple things like your body fat, which you can stick on a pair of scales. We look at your resting heart rate and your active heart rate to tell us how well your heart is performing, and which is part of like the mortality test, as we call it. And then the other one was like what you call the sit and rise test we use. It's a Brazilian study that showed that for every point, when you're over 50 years old, for every hand or limb or part you use to get up and down off the floor with, it takes 6.5 years off your life. He gives you a score of 1 to 10, 0 to 10, and like I think literally is if you score less than 8, you're 2.5 times more likely to die in the next 6 to 10 years than you would be if you had 8 or more points. And if you score less than 3 points, you're between 5 to 7 more times more likely to die because you haven't got the mobility, flexibility, power to weight ratio, strength to even help you to get up off the floor if you fall down, let alone if you fall down itself. And fall is one of the biggest killers in the world out there. It's one of the things I saw in the police a lot, actually. It's one of the most rewarding calls I used to go to was these what we call collapse behind locked doors. And it was like somebody who'd fallen over. Sometimes there'd be people in there who'd be on the floor for 2 to 3 days. Like, and too embarrassed to call their family and friends because they didn't want to. They wanted to try and get up off the floor themselves. In the end, they gave up and said, "Yep, no, we're going to call the police," because they had these pendants around their neck to help them get up off the floor. Sometimes it was just too late, but it's crazy how that does impact long term and longevity. We want to look at because I guarantee you now, the sit and rise. If you Google sit and rise test, Brazilian get up test, you can find it on Google anywhere. Most people in their 30s cannot do it. Like literally cannot do it, and that's crazy.
I think you and I had this conversation, James, about training and how we don't sort of tend to train for what we do each day. Like you go to the gym, how many times a day are we doing this? It's exactly. Not many. How many times a day are we doing this? Not that many.
Nick.
Yeah. nice ass. But it's like, so if you're on the ground, that's where a push-up is going to help you. You know, yep. It's if you fall over, do some exercises that are actually going to strengthen the muscles and condition the muscles to how we actually need to use them in our day-to-day life. And unfortunately, we're all sitting for far too long, so we're all out here now. So we need to do more. To get back in that word balance, you need to do more back exercises, I imagine.
Well, yeah, it's a mixture of everything. The thing I see more than anything is the ability for people to recover, because the older you get, your ability to recover diminishes, no matter what you do. And taking like the average, middle age, guy between 35 and 50, just take the average guy there. Wife, 2 kids, high powerful, maybe stress type job, right? And he wants to work out. But think of the stresses involved with his work, life, probably lack of sleep as well, everything tied into it. Yeah, he's going to do like a new fancy HIIT workout that all the young personal trainers are telling him to do because it's the best way to lose fat. The stress he's putting on his body is completely detrimental to what he's doing here. It's not going to make him recover faster. It's going to make him burn out faster. And it's going to make him more likely to lead to injuries way faster.
What kind of movement would you recommend for that type of person?
Yeah, honestly, like walking. It sounds so simplistic, but if someone was to ask me what's the best exercise to give to people who are in that sort of level here, I'd say go for a 30 to 45 minute walk daily. Start there. Let's just absolutely start down it back. And they look at me going, "I just paid you money to tell me to walk more." I go, "Yeah, pretty much." That's
this is where our first fundamental kicks in though, and people go, "But I don't have time." And the same with meditation, it's a classic.
Yep.
Tell me how to be happy and how to stress less. Go and meditate for an hour a day. Oh, I don't have time. All right, go and meditate for 2 hours a day then. It's that I don't have time. I'm not worth investing in.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And they go, "Well, I want to go to the gym." "Well, I haven't got time." Okay, well, they haven't got time to walk. So where do I go? Where do I start with? I can't help you. And people are going to be in the right mindset first. what we realize, I can tell them everything, but unless they're ready to approach you and come for help first and be willing to accept and listen to ideas, then we can't help. We got to wait them to hit rock bottom almost sometimes to be able to pick them back up again in a idea of fitness. But we go back to what sort of training stuff we can do. I like the simplest and easiest, I reckon, one of the best workouts people could do right now, if they've got a pair of running shoes and they run, is go for a run every 5 minutes, drop down, do 5 to 10 push-ups, get up and run again. It's all military style, but you're doing basic strength and core work whilst getting some cardio effects to it. So that's the easiest way to think about it.
And you don't need any fancy equipment or anything.
No, don't need any fancy equipment. A lot of the work, you do need strength training. You know, if you want to get to the higher ends of what we call an everyday athlete, like just ready for anything, you do need to do strength training. But what we try and do is people who there's another relationship with cardio that people have in the world, and they hate it. Like, for whatever reason, a lot of people in the world just hate cardio. I think because they've been punished, maybe from military backgrounds, maybe from whatever, they see it as a punishment. But it's also bloody hard, the way they try and go about it. Like, they try and go to failure, and it's like hard work. Whereas what we try and do is we try and do little circuits that are continuous, but relatively between 60 to 70% of the effort you're doing, to keep that and building this base of recovery. Again, a very simple workout. If you go into the gym, go on the rower, concept 2 rower, do a 500 meter row, and after you row, get off, do 5 simple push-ups for guys who can do 15, 20 push-ups, whatever. If you can't do push-ups, then we'll think of something else. It's very simple. It's simple as this: do 500 meter row, easy effort, like super easy. Like you can talk still, you can breathe through your nose. In fact, if you want to be able to do it, probably put some water in your mouth, keep your mouth closed, just breathe through your nose. That's a good indication to see how easy you can do it. Then jump off the rower, immediately do like 5 push-ups, 10 air squats, bodyweight air squats, jump back on the rower, do the same thing again, repeat for about 20 minutes. Sounds boring, monotonous, but you get into this meditate. I get into like a meditation with it. Like in a mindset, it's like okay, can I do this again, repeatable? At the end of 20 minutes, you've done a bloody good workout. You've probably rode 3,000 to 5,000 meters. You've done maybe 100 to 150 push-ups and squats, and you get off feeling refreshed and revitalized instead of beat down and shit.
Smashed. Needing to spend the rest of the day on the couch.
Let me run this part. Let me run this past the two of you then. So when we're talking about our relationship, and when I think of relationship with food and exercise, for example, and we're talking about how it's a drug. People use food as a drug and exercise as a drug. It's an unhealthy relationship. I'm going to go smash myself, and I'm going to go and just consume a heap of shit. Well, if you can change your relationship with it and do as you did there, James, and make it enjoyable, make it, it's going to be unpleasant to a degree because you've got to get the heart rate up and whatever. But if you can look at your nutrition as cooking is part of nutrition, and cooking is such a meditative thing to do. It's such a healthy thing to do. You can do it with your partner or your kids or whatever. So once again, if you change your relationship with these things, enjoy going to the supermarket, enjoy picking up and smelling fruits and seeing how minimal you can touch this food in order to prepare it for a meal. Keep it as close to how it's grown as possible. Keep it as far away from cans and packets and plastic as you can. Play around with it and have this really interesting relationship where you're experiencing it. Go and put on your runners and walk up a hill and actually experience what it's like to walk up that hill and be present with it. It's so different to just going and smashing yourself or just doing it hard. And I think if we can change that relationship, we're going to go so much further.
I agree, and that's the thing. That's what this is why we put nutrition last, because it's easier. I reckon it's easier to change someone's religion than it is to change their nutrition habits or their beliefs. Because it's on the same thing. I always joke, particularly with my American buddies, and like when I'm going to like fitness conferences and I'm working or teaching or presenting, I will always say there's 5 topics I never talk about. That is guns, politics, religion, nutrition, and kettlebells. Because kettlebells are a similar thing as well, actually, believe it or not. Like, it's one of the most crazy worlds out there. But nutrition is one of those things where, like, everyone has an opinion. Everyone is right. Even my mother thinks, who's not a nutritional expert, thinks she knows what she's doing. Everyone thinks because they eat every day, they're an expert on food and nutrition. And it's that kind of healthy mindset relationship you have to have with food. But like I said, just from our point of view, that we're seeing this now, if they have an unhealthy relationship with food, they get pretty much surety of having an unhealthy relationship with exercise. And until we work with an unhealthy relationship with exercise, we've got no hope of making any indent and making suggestions or improvements around their nutrition. Because because in the media, keto is the biggest thing, or the carnivore diet's the biggest thing. That's one end of the nutrition spectrum. Then you've got the vegans over the other side, and there's no middle ground. No one wants to be in the middle, whereas nutrition should be in the middle. Like, there's no one diet that suits everybody, because everybody's biochemistry is different. Everyone's physiology is different. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm highly allergic to dairy. Like, I have grew up on a dairy farm my entire life, and I'm allergic to dairy. My parents and my grandparents tried to kill me all the time, by just giving me dairy. It was literally, it's like, you've grown out of this. No, I haven't grown out of this, because it's just the way it is.
That's what it gets like in nutrition circles. Like, someone else who their body agrees really well with dairy, and then they'll go to you and say, we should just fucking have dairy, it's fine. And you're like, we're different. We're allowed to be different, and we're allowed to experience things differently.
So this is where the ego comes in, and let's bring the ego into this discussion, because the ego is what builds very big muscles. The ego is what gets people imposing their beliefs onto other people. You should do this diet. I think you need to do this. I think you should be more like me. I don't like you when you're different. I don't want you to step outside the parameters that I operate within. I'm uncomfortable with that, so you have to adhere to what I'm doing. And it's so toxic, and people get so confused because they overcomplicate it all. And if we can just bring it back and simplify it, meditation. People don't meditate because they get so confused by it. Where for me, it's just sit down. Focus on your breath. That's all it needs to be. For how long? I don't give a shit.
What kind of cushion? What time of day? What music should I have on?
Which version of Enya should I have on? How many whale mates?
Shepherd Moon. What a great album that was.
What hibiscus candle do I need? And it's just sit down, close your eyes, exercise, just go and walk. Food, just keep it as simple as possible. But people just want to overcomplicate it.
Exactly, and that's just a simple thing. One of the being more mindful with food. I think what you said before is great, because one of the ways one of our habits, because we have two approaches to when we're working with people in nutrition. Once they're ready and in a good place to do it, this is the key thing. We have two pathways. There's the people who love seeing nutrition and food as data, and that, the data, like looking at calories and stuff, which is great. It's that I'd always argue that's one of the fastest ways to get quick results. But even when you gain quick results, you've got to go off. You've got to learn to go away from weighing food and counting calories afterwards. If that makes sense. But then you've got the people who have been so severely hurt and scared of the scales or weighing food or counting calories. You've got to go down the habit-based approach. So you've got to work out where the people are in the middle. Where are they to begin with? And which branch do we go down with them to begin with? How do we start here? But all in all, it comes back to better habits. That's the key thing. It's okay, we can get you from A to B quickly by knowing your calories and knowing stuff here, but we're going to bring you back to good habits afterwards to transition you out of one of these type of things. But there's other people who are going to start with good habits. One of the best habits we've discovered to be more mindful when it comes to eating and food is after every mouthful you have with a fork, sitting at the table having food. Every time you have a mouthful, put your fork back on the table and think about your food. Just think about it, and then pick up the fork back in.
At that Shiva Som place that I worked at, it's a health resort, and they've got egg timers on every table. And as soon as you sit down, you got to turn the egg timer over, and the suggestion is don't finish your meal until before the egg timer runs out. And that's brilliant. Yeah, so you got to actually stop, being mindful, converse with somebody else. Forget the food for a minute. Don't just consume it. Give your stomach time to receive it. Experience whatever the drink is that you're having, and it slows you down. And we talk about slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Well, it's slowing down really gets us a long way. I came across this TED talk a while ago, and I'm not sure if you've seen it, James, but it was where does weight go? How do we lose weight, and what's the science behind where does fat go? And it was I'm gonna spoil it for everyone, but it leaves via our breath.
Breath, exactly.
And it was amazing, and it's about a 10-minute TED talk. It's on in the resources section on my website for those that are interested. But it was amazing. This bloke just said, if you want to lose weight, it goes via your breath, but you got to get your heart rate up a little bit. So that's, people take the easy path and they just walk along flat ground. I dusted off the pusher the other day and I rode down the hill to the supermarket and I had to ride back up the fucker. And I had the jelly legs when I got off and I was, but it was just like, I felt a sense of achievement because I'm like, all right, I got out of my comfort zone. I pushed myself. And yeah, now I've got to go.
It's exactly right. So like, here's the funny thing. Like, I talk about we always go back to a system of how we work with people, and WWS is the foundation. That's the first thing we look at. Now, what I don't tell people is the fourth element of that is breathing and nasal breathing, because for exact same reason, where does weight loss go? It's through your breath. Now, we take back to your breath. I don't, in terms of meditation, like I'm a complete novice. Like I think I meditate when I'm in the shower, which I find quite relaxing and cathartic. When I go for a walk, I feel I get into like this flow-like state certain times. That's where kind of for me is like my meditation. I'd love to learn more about it, to be brutally honest. I just haven't prioritized it enough recently. But we talk about nasal breathing. This is a biggie for me, which I found. And most people are as well. They're what we call mouth breathers. So if people are constantly mouth breathing, they're constantly over breathing. If they're over breathing all the time through their mouth, it means their shoulders going up and down like this all the time. It constantly makes them stressed. At the same time, oxygenation isn't able to take place because you need CO2 as part of the whole oxygenation process to allow oxygen to get into the cells and muscles of the working body. But if you're over breathing too much, you expel too much CO2 and you don't retain enough, and your body becomes intolerant to carbon dioxide. So if I tell people straight away that, hey, I think we need to work on your breathing, they think I'm freaking mental because I breathe every single day. Whereas most people don't. They use their mouths to breathe in.
Oh, that just dropped in and out, Haas. It said recording stopped, recording started, and we can't hear you now. But yeah, so I'm surprised so many people are still alive because they just don't breathe properly. And nope. When I say to people, so if you're watching on YouTube, I've got a hand on my chest, a hand on my stomach. When I say to someone, take a deep breath, this is what we see.
Yep.
And it's all in the top third of the lungs, the smallest part of the lungs. It's all up here, and then relax.
I'm gonna stress you up.
And they're holding it all up here. So teaching people, and I have a picture of a balloon in your belly, and you got to draw the breath down into the belly and inflates that balloon, and they just can't get it. It takes weeks for people to reconnect with their diaphragm. But if you watch a baby or a little puppy dog, the only body part that's moving when they're asleep is their stomach. It's just rising and falling.
It's a retraining process, isn't it? You do things one way for so long, because the nose breathing one's really interesting for me because I've been a mouth breather all my life. And it's literally it's been a bit over a year, maybe 14 months that I've had to start working on it. And it's been a process. It's like consciously reminding yourself constant throughout the day, shit, I'm breathing through my mouth again. Stop that. Mm-hmm. I've done the mouth tape at night, which is fucking terrifying the first couple of times that you do that. You feel like you're going to die, but it's been, a real process.
The two biggest causes I've found for mouth breathing and for shallow chest breathing is smoking and anxiety. Mm-hmm. So smokers, it's just all into the top part of the chest, and anxiety, it's just, I need a breath. So the short, sharp, shallow breaths just into the top third of the lungs. So I can pick straight away who's been a smoker or who's spent years in a state of anxiety.
It's also as well that there's a big link, and there's studies been done on this of babies who were bottle fed over breastfed. So, and I was bottle fed, but when you're bottle fed, the top of your palate doesn't quite develop properly by latching onto the mother's breast and doing that sucking motion, which can cause a narrowing of the nasal, and you start breathing through your mouth. So that's sort of one that kind of resonated with me, and it actually changes the structure of your face when you breathe through your mouth. It's really interesting stuff. There's a few really good books on it. Nestor was his name, the last name, Nestor.
James Nestor, James Nestor. Yeah. Breath. That's the thing. So it's funny because in the last 12 months, breath and James Nestor become quite big. But in the Buteyko, is it Buteyko? I think it's called.
Yeah, I did that course. Buteyko or whatever it's called. I've done that course. Yeah.
They've been doing it for years, but it's just become famous now because James Nestor's done it. But then there's another good book I highly recommend anyone reading. It's called The Oxygen Advantage by Patrick Mckeon. He's one of the leading guys in nasal breathing and breath in Europe. And he's been around for the last 10, 15 years or so. Highly recommended. And it's interesting because, like, just me as an example, I felt so much like me. I've always had struggled with like holding my breath. I didn't know why. Like as a kid, you know, when you have to like dive to the bottom of the swimming pool, pick up the brick, come back up. I hated that because I couldn't hold my breath for long enough. And like, you know, just in playing the games where you hold your breath through the tunnels, I'd always lose. And it was just always this thing like, why can't I hold my breath better? Discovered by a couple of simple tests that I was mostly a mouth breather, had been my entire life. So there's simple tests is like, you know, you breathe in through your nose, you breathe out through your nose, fully exhaling, pinch your nose and see how long you can hold your breath for and until the first urge to breathing happens. Not just how long you can hold it for when you feel like a tightening of the airways or like something in your stomach coming in. I lasted 7 to 8 seconds, which is horrendous. The idea should be between 40 seconds plus. And like the difference I went through of going through that period of helping me improve my breathing, it completely de-stressed me. Like completely I felt more at ease. Like exercising became more effortless in a sense. I talk about mouth breathing, like taping your mouth up at night. Like I tried that for the first time. I got a bit of like rock tape, the kinesia tape, right? Because I had loads of it here in the house. I thought, right, I'm going to try this straight away. So I taped up my whole mouth like this. I went, right, I'm going to do this. Lay in bed, I freaked out. Completely freaked out. I was like completely like, can't do this. I had to rip it off within like a matter of minutes. Like, nope, not happening. And even when I was walking around the house with this tape around my mouth, it's like, nah, doesn't like it at all. I had to build up to it. Yeah. So it took me 6 to 12 months to get to 40 seconds, which I can get to now. But like, my God, that was a learning curve. That was such a learning curve.
A really good training exercise is to join the army and do some kidnap training where they actually, or just go to Brazil or somewhere where you can get kidnapped and stick the tape over. It's perfect. Cheapest way to learn how to breathe.
Cheapest way to do it, yeah. Exactly. But yeah, no, for those who are interested in taping the mouth at night, my best tip is get a bit of tape, kinesia tape or anything here, but a thumb width and put it down the center of your mouth.
That's what I do. Yeah. There's still, you can open it a bit if you want, but if you relax, it'll stay shut. So there's less of the freak out than taping your whole face up.
Exactly.
James,
it just deregulates the whole system.
Yeah. I've got a question. We've spoken about recovery has come up a few times and that kind of theme. At Strength Matters, do you have a particular way that you can measure how recovered someone is?
Yeah, heart rate.
Heart rate variability?
No, we don't use HRV. We try and keep it as simple as possible. HRV is useful. If you like all the tech gadgets and stuff and everything, it's good, but it isn't always that accurate from what I've seen. A lot of people will push it and say it's great, but when you look at the top level coaches and athletes, when they have everything monitored to the nth degree, they still don't use HRV to the highest level, even though the people push it to be. And I've got friends who sell these courses and do these things in HRV, and I think it's a useful tool, but what I try and do is keep it as simple as possible. What can we work with that's as simple as possible? So, as simple as possible is the talk test. How quickly can someone talk again after they've done a bout of exercise? We do the breathing test, how quickly they can come back to breathing. But the best way, everyone's got pretty much a smartwatch or a Fitbit or something these days. Using someone's heart rate is one of the best ways we look at it here to do it. So, I'll give you an example. If you go for a 1K run, you run 1K, monitor your heart rate, see what the heart rate, stick at a specific heart rate. Just say we use the formula called, God, now I'm getting too technical. Hang on, let me make this simple.
Come on.
Okay, so technical. So what I want to see is their ability to recover with heart rate. So we're going to go for a run straight away. I've never seen you run before, but we know you can run. You're going to do a 1K run. Then I want you to recover until your heart rate gets down to 160 minus your age. So it's specific and unique to you, okay? So so that's just nice and simple. Someone who's 40 years old, 160 minus, okay, so you're gonna do your run, you're gonna recover down to 120 beats per minute, and you're gonna run that 1K again. And I wanna keep you going, right, to see what your times are for each of those 1K runs, and then we're gonna time your rest period as well to see what happens. So what I want to do in an ideal world is see you run 1K. So let's just say, I don't know, Like it's 3 minutes. Just make it up. It's three. You can run 1K in 3 minutes. Great, fantastic. Here, great. You were going to recover, and it takes you to get to 120 in 2 minutes. Great. So we've got a 3 minute and 2 minute recovery window. I want to see how many times you can do 3 minutes and 2 minutes. Yeah. Most people will run 3K 3 minutes, recover 2 minutes. They'll suddenly run 3:30, recover 2:30. It's like an upward trend all the way. Whereas what I want to see is identical periods of recovery along the way. So, and that is something you've got to train and help people with. So like, I want to see your rest and time need to be almost identical, like less than 5% difference along the way. Once they get above 5%, we stop and pull you back and we need to work on recovery. That's a simple way to look at those sort of things. But it comes back to easy training. The only way to get someone good and like that sort of recoverability is to have a really good, strong aerobic system. And an aerobic system is built by doing lots of volume at low intensity. Not high intensity, low intensity. So if we're talking heart rate when it comes to that, we're looking at 180 minus your age. So if you go for a run, and most people hate me when they do this for the first time. Say you're out there, you want to go for a run. I challenge you to run at 180 minus your age. So again, if you're 40 years old, go at 140. Try and stick to a running pattern here. You will feel so slow. You will feel like it's not doing anything at all. And that's the issue. Most people can't run with such a low heart rate, which means their ability to recover and replenish, the aerobic system and oxygen in the body is not there. You cannot replenish ATP fast enough at that rate here. That's the secret. That is the biggest secret I can give you now. And it doesn't mean it's running, swimming, cycling, whatever you do, use the same. It's the math formula, 180 minus your age. Try and stay at that low intensity and build volume. And you'll find you'll get quicker at that speed over time, which shows your recoverability is better. Then you go and do the hard stuff afterwards because you can recover faster to go harder into it in a non-technical sense.
Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. I love it.
Yeah. Absolutely. That is literally, and then most people, so if we take the best, let's take Kipchoge, the guy who runs sub 2 hours on the marathon with the help of all the cars and stuff in Austria. Like he holds the marathon record anyway. The secret, people always talk about your anaerobic threshold, which is the point of no return, where like you want a high anaerobic threshold to push as hard as you can, as fast as you can here. He has a high anaerobic threshold. But guess what? People don't talk about this, what we call this aerobic threshold. Like, so Kipchoge is like the elite of the elite, has a different, his aerobic threshold is so close to his anaerobic threshold that he's running 5.5 minute miles aerobically, which is easy for him, which makes him allowed to run 4 30-minute miles for the marathon, right?
Right.
Most everyday people, their gap is not like this, it's like this. So what happens is they do their workouts, instead of doing it in like, using oxygen as the main fuel, in the aerobic, the aerobic system is their end prime source of energy and fats as their main fuels, right? They come into what we call sugar burners, into this big zone of death in the middle here, and they work out here. So they become so great at sugar burning that they can't replenish, the fuel fast enough in this whole entire time. So this is where I'd argue that 99% of people doing HIIT workouts, everyday people, yes, it's fun. I get it, they enjoy it. It's a bit of fun, and you should always do it for enjoyment sometimes. But if you want to improve to get better, if you're training what we call this shitty zone of nothing in the middle here, you just teach yourself to get worse and feel worse.
The shitty zone of nothing.
It is. It's the zone of death, we call it. It's a no-go zone. Whereas if I can train somebody to bring this aerobic threshold up slowly, they'll get faster and it'll be easier, more effortless. And that's the secret to people over 30. They look at these guys, the elites, thinking they need to do these hard runs, these hard tempo runs, these sprints, all these things. No, you haven't earned the right to get to that level yet. Because
yes. Do you think James is passionate about this?
I think he's into it. I think he's in the right field. I think he's in the right industry.
He sounds into it to me. He's like, you can hear it coming out of him. He's just like, and that's what makes him good at what he does. That it's the passion that's driving him, and it's a beautiful thing to watch and to hear and to experience.
Well, it is. It's also hits home to me because this is the aerobic stuff in the last 5 years is what I discovered. It's funny actually because I discovered I grew up playing cricket, rugby, sport, running up and down mountains all day long. When I was living down in Mount Eliza, Nick, can you remember the time? I I was in the worst shape of my life, like literally. And I remember going for a run down to Frankston, from down literally down the hill into Frankston, down to the water thing with Vicky and Leanne at the time. And like, I couldn't keep up with them. That was my first time I'd run in like years. And I was like, what the hell's going on? Because I've been lifting weights. I've been traveling, not taking care of myself. And you know, like, I was a fitness professional, couldn't run. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, but I used to be able to do it. So this is why the passion's always come back here. Because I'll never forget that day when Vicky and Leanne looked at me going, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I can't freaking run. Because I'd become so detrained. It wasn't healthy. I wasn't in a healthy place or mindset or anything at all like that. But it's interesting, but just quickly to finish on like the Poje thing, like the elite, take him as a very top example of running. What people don't realize and what people don't see, like again, like the iceberg effect, is that they see his hard runs, his tempo runs, everything he's doing here, running 5-minute miles. He's earned the right to get there. Because guess what he did from the age of 5 years old upwards? He ran to school one way, 10K. And then he ran home again, 10K. He did that every single day to go to school. And you don't sprint to school, do you, every day? He does. It became like a normal, easy, effortless run for him. So he made it effortless over time. So he built this big aerobic base that allows him to go at the highest levels now of doing what he wants to do. And people skip the whole 20, 30 years development in the start to try and skip to the fancy stuff at the end. And health doesn't work like that. Health is not
overnight success takes years to achieve.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great. There's so much to take away from this. I think if you think about actionable steps for everyone listening, is those 3 sevens are so important. I think if you talk, people love these actionable steps and these takeaways. And that's one that if you're maybe falling short in 1, 2, or 3 of those areas, being able to bring them up, as James had says, based on the data that they have at Strength Matters, is going to make drastic improvements to your health. And, you know, I've learned so much in this podcast. A lot of people who know me are probably like, why is he so interested? But I'm over 30. I know it's really hard to believe, but I am.
Your handicap's over 30 as well.
Nick. Probably is now.
Well, it's interesting because you guys have gone into lockdown. I think pretty much the whole of Australia's almost gone into lockdown, isn't it? In the last couple of days or weeks and everything. What we've seen, just from our experience over here, we joke about it behind the scenes, call it the COVID-19 pounds people put on, because people have put on so much weight over the time because their habits have changed. Yeah. Like, you believe it or not, they did a massive study.
Gyms have locked down as well. I was at this time last, when was it? March last year. I was probably the fittest and healthiest I've been since I left the army, and just feeling amazing. Nutrition was on point and everything. I was going to these really cool cardio Pilates workout, which was amazing. Mm-hmm. So it was like on the reformers, but then you're up doing some push-ups, and then you're doing squats, and kettlebells were there too, James. Shout out to kettlebells. And then COVID hit, and all of a sudden I couldn't go to do that training anymore, and you start just falling in a slump, you slow down, and so it all just sort of started falling off, and here we are.
It's interesting though, because we talk about unhealthy relationships with food, exercise, everything else in the show, and what we just talked about here now is like, well, what we discovered in COVID is people's unhealthy relationships just got exacerbated. Yeah. Because they were going to like classes, gyms, and they were like their havens of like sanctuary to go to here. You take those places away, you realize that people haven't got a plan or system in place to help them do this. Now, the people who have got a healthier, like I was not saying you have the same with you, Nick. Now I'm saying to the sense of people, well, it's about principles rather than about the tools. Like, if you're going to exercise, well, okay, the gyms aren't there. Cool. What can I do what can I do different? Okay, maybe go for a run, or do some body weight stuff. Change your mindset. Don't focus on the gym work. Focus on something completely different.
Well, you got to adapt when the circumstances change. You got to adapt or die. So we've got. Yeah. I'm lucky enough to back onto a nature park now with hills everywhere. So I'm just going to go walking up hills, and it's great. So
that's it.
It's also, I think, there's an element to it when we go to, whether it's the gym or we go to a yoga class or we're going to whatever it is, there's this social connection, and us human beings, we crave connection. And a lot of people who are in lockdown at the minute are struggling because we miss that social connection. So we start connecting to food. in more of an unhealthy way. So,
Yeah, exactly. And the one tip I can give people now is to look at the steps, because the study that came out in October last year, they were tracking a load of GB athletes who were going to the Olympics, which has just happened now. And what they found was their training stayed identical, but they all put on between 1 to 3% of body fat. Now, in terms of elite athletes, that's huge. The reason was because their day-to-day life had been affected by the whole lockdown. They weren't walking more. They weren't being more active throughout the day. So even though they're doing the same training and the same training protocols, their body fat percentage went up because they weren't as active and as moving as much as possible during the whole course of the day. So if you can, get your steps in as much as possible. That's my best tip, to focus on that if you're in
Drink the water.
Get your steps
sleep,
in, get your water in, get your sleep in.
Rest, hydrate, and move.
And breathe.
Yes. And breathe. Don't forget to breathe. James, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a wealth of information, this podcast. I'd love for you just to, if anyone listening wants to reach out, check out what you're doing, check out the podcast, where can they do that?
Yeah, cool. Hey guys, if you want to listen to any more stuff, we got like 1,000,001 episodes of our podcast. It's now called Fit Over 30. Just Google on Apple, Spotify, Amazon now, which just came out. So if you guys want to listen there. And again, strengthmatters.com. If you want to see what we're doing as a company. And then for me personally, if you just want to see like me playing cricket, snowboarding, doing random shit, eating food and burgers, it's on James Breese on Instagram. That's the best way to find me.
Love it. Thank you, mate. Nico, thank you as always. You go back and tell those ghost stories around the fire, all right?
Yeah, all right. Oh, gotta get another log.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you all next week.
Peace.